Hey Channel Insiders, welcome back to Channel Insider Partner POV, your source for untapped opportunities and unfiltered opinions in the IT channel, all to help you make better business decisions. I'm your host, Katie Bavoso. My guest today is Art Amador, co-founder and chief operations officer of QuantumStreet AI, an IBM FinTech partner focused on using AI powered by IBM Watson X to give wealth managers, investors, and financial institutions succinct, up-to-date data from markets around the globe and give them time back in their days. Art, welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Katie.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to dissect everything QuantumStreet AI because what you do is so cool, especially from a surface level, getting to learn about you. I'm excited to dig in. So first of all, I'll point out that you're an IBM FinTech partner. Why don't you go ahead and give us a description of exactly what QuantumStreet AI is and who you are as a company?
So QuantumStreet AI, what we do is we specialize in AI investment solutions, and we do this across various asset managers, banks, wealth management. And so really what we're trying to do is run a mission to help people, investors, make smarter investment data-driven decisions.
So who are your customers? You talk about investment banks, but dig a little deeper on that and tell me who exactly we're talking about here and what's the ultimate problem that QuantumStreet AI is solving for them?
Our journey actually goes back to UC Berkeley during an MBA program. That's actually where I met my two co-founders, Chita and Chris. And we had taken several classes together, specifically around investing, so equity investment strategies, hedge funds. And a lot of these classes were taught by Sam Molesky, who is a very well-known and fantastic professor that the three of us studied under. And he would have some of the smartest investors come in there, and they were all different kinds of investors. So you had quantitative investors like AQR come in, fundamental investors like Franklin Templeton, for example. And then you would also have all these different kinds of specializations, sector specializations, macro specializations. And one of the things that Chita recognized, and he had already 2 decades of AI and machine learning experience that he'd been working at Intel as an engineering director. And one of the things that he noticed was that the data was absolutely exploding at the time. And this was back in like 2016. And so we had all these very smart investors come in, but they all very much focus on one or two things. So a fundamental investor just looks at, balance sheets, looks at earnings. And you have a quantitative investor like AQR, which cares just about price and doesn't look at earnings. Then you also have those fundamental managers who are like, I read 3 or 4 news articles about the company that I was interested in. And so we started thinking about, hey, those two could actually benefit from seeing the other's perspective. And so what if we could combine all of the investment information, fundamental data, macro data, technical data, as well as process news, which is a huge part of the current data environment. It's about 90% of all the data is unstructured data, which is things like news. And so how can we combine all that information to help people make smarter investment decisions? And so we started working with a very small asset manager at first. Back in 2017, AI was still kind of in its infancy. You didn't have the big ChatGPT moment that we saw more recently. And so back then, we were really pioneering the idea of applying AI technology to the investment process. And so we got a lot of interest from various financial institutions. We started actually working with banks first and foremost, specifically quantitative investment solutions teams. I think that they were kind of the probably ideal candidate because they understood a lot of the advanced science and math behind what it was that we were doing. So it kind of helped them wrap their arms around that a little bit. And so right now, predominantly, our clients are global banks, but we do also work with asset managers. And I think as we think about the adoption process, I think we see banks first and then asset managers and wealth managers adopted. And I think that's also partly due to regulatory constraints as well.
So I do have some more questions having to do with your customers, but I want to backtrack for a minute because you brought up your friends that you met at UC Berkeley and that this sort of just slid into the company story. But I know there's more in between that. So could you dig more into the story of how QuantumStreet AI sort of came to be and talk about how did IBM come into the picture there?
Yeah, so back at UC Berkeley during the MBA program, when we had all these investors come in, we were thinking about how we could combine all this information together to help people make smarter investment decisions. As I mentioned, Cheetah Katua, 2 decades at Intel in AI, machine learning. So we started to think about which platforms could we use in order to make this all happen. And so we tested several platforms. And when I say tested several platforms, one of the biggest things that we were doing, as I mentioned, the unstructured data, so the news. So we thought about how could we process millions of news articles and social media posts and combine that with the traditional financial data. And so we looked at all the different natural language processing engines out there, and we tested them because our commitment was and still is today to be on the best performing platform. And best performing means specific to our application, which is the application to investing. And so we tested multiple platforms. We uncovered that IBM's platform was the best for our use case. And in addition to identifying that, we started experimenting and exploring with the platform. And IBM is fantastic for startups in that they have all these different programs. And they had reached out to us and said, hey, we're seeing your usage. Like, can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing? And we told them, how we were applying it to the finance space and investing. And they got really excited about it. And they asked us to be part of something called the IBM Global Entrepreneur Program, which doesn't exist today anymore. Oh, no. I think that name doesn't exist. They changed the name. It's still, the program is still there, but it's something else.
I was going to say, did they cap it off with you because they couldn't go beyond that? They said, this is the best. We got to retire the program.
No, they're still out there helping many startups. And I definitely encourage, anyone who's kind of new and looking for something to check it out. But so what they did for us is they put us in this thing called the IBM Global Entrepreneur Program, and they allocated credits to us, 6 digits worth of credits. And those credits we were able to utilize for the first year and a half of operating the business. Shortly after that, they introduced us to a program called the With Watson program. And that was incredibly helpful. So the With Watson program allowed us to go out and talk about our IBM usage, that IBM is a partner of ours and that we're using the IBM platform. So I remember back at UC Berkeley when we were talking to Sam Oleski, the professor, and he was kind of like, well, Cheetah and Art and Chris, you guys can't just run out there and just be like, we are the AI investment platforms. Like, that is going to require like a lot of work. You have to be traveling everywhere and like really to do all that. And so I was really thinking about that. Like, it's hard to be recognized amongst many startups. So once they kind of introduced this program, well, what if we go out there and we're like, yes, we are QuantumStreet, but also we're a With Watson company. The media just really grabbed a hold of that. They're like, IBM and this startup is launching this AI-powered exchange-traded fund. It's the first one ever. And then Bloomberg put it on their timeline of significant like AI events that occurred. Google's, Go moment, IBM's Jeopardy moment. And there we are, launching the world's first AI-powered exchange-traded fund. So I think the fact that we partnered with them brought a ton of visibility to us. And that also really helped bring the clients as well, because when you think about it as a startup and also in the financial service space, trust is everything. Credibility is everything. And although Cheetah has 2 decades of AI experience, I was in wealth management at Fidelity for a decade, and Chris is ex-Goldman Sachs, who managed $30 billion in assets. Still, we were a startup, and having a large partner stand next to us and say, they're with us, helped change, I think, our investors' perception and their willingness to try new technology, to try something new that they hadn't done before.
Now, you mentioned Fidelity there, and I was going to bring that up. You have a decade of working with Fidelity and working with some crazy amounts of money. Let's just say that at least $1.5 billion in money and assets for your customers that you were consulting with. And I think that in itself is so impressive. But was there ever a point working at Fidelity that you saw a moment where you said, I really could have used, or my customers really could have used what QuantumStreet AI offers now?
So our office would open to customers at about 8 o'clock, and we would have our high net worth investors come in, and we would engage them in investment planning, estate planning, retirement planning, insurance planning, all the different facets of wealth management. But I would come in an hour, 2 hours early, and I would essentially study the markets. And even today, the #1 tool for financial advisors is Google. So I would come in, I would read Fidelity's research, I would read other research that was coming in because your investors want you to seem knowledgeable. And they're inevitably going to ask me, what do you think, or what does Fidelity think? Where do you see the markets headed? And so I would need to understand where, and these are multi-asset investors. They invest in US stocks, international stocks, they invest in fixed income, which is bonds, and they also hold cash, emergency funds. So you have these multi-asset portfolio. And so I need to understand, where are US stocks going, international stocks, emerging stocks, what's happening in different sectors, technology. And so I'd have to do all this research, because essentially what we're going to engage in is a discussion of, here's where your portfolio is at. Here's where Fidelity thinks the market is heading. Here are the adjustments that we need to ultimately make to your portfolio so that you're better positioned for the future and you could capture these returns. And so that was a lot of data analysis for me. And I mean, how many news articles can I read in any given day? I'm meeting with clients and reviewing their retirement plans and estate plans. So having that ability to succinctly analyze millions of news articles and come up with a summarization requires a lot of time. As I mentioned, a couple hours probably each day. And like I said, how much data was I actually touching? Like this much? So with our QuantumStreet platform, we're processing 1 million news articles every day. And we're doing this, IBM's NLP engine can do more than 30 different languages. So this is global data. And so now on the QuantumStreet platform, I can read a AI summary, generative AI summary, that tells me what is happening around the world and how it relates to these various asset classes, a very succinct summary. And I can also get forecasts on different securities, different markets, different asset classes. So it really kind of shrinks all that time required down and captures a lot more information than I could have in those 2 hours before the market opens.
So you're not just giving succinct data to your customers, you're giving them time back to invest in whatever they want.
That's right.
Now, you mentioned some of those international customers, and I recently saw that QuantumStreet AI collaborated with BNP Paribas to bring services to Brazil. So where are your services available? Are you worldwide?
Yeah, so when we first started, we focused on US equities because you have to start somewhere. And there's 50,000 companies globally that are publicly traded around the world. If you throw in private companies, it's even more than that. We started analyzing US companies, but our customers like HSBC, like BNP Paribas, they are global in nature. So we will talk to their offices in London and in Hong Kong, and in this case in Brazil, and obviously also in the US, which is our predominant market. So one of the things that they were kind of pushing us towards in the very beginning was, hey, how can you expand across first expand your stock coverage from US to international to cover all of our different operations, but also expand asset classes too. So not just cover stocks, but also cover bonds and commodities and other alternative asset classes. And so we really expanded that asset coverage so that we can serve these clients. And this is also why it's important to have a good vendor, because I mentioned natural language processing, which is a big component of what we're doing. Having IBM able to process 30 different languages, because we'll have potentially a customer in Japan, and they will say, well, what do you know about the Japanese market? And we're like, oh, well, this is how much data we're processing in the Japanese market. These are all the Japanese securities we're covering. These are all the forecasts that we're making. So our system knows a lot. It's learned a lot and aggregated data on the Japanese market over time, both in their native language, as well as other languages, including US, that may apply directly to the Japanese equity markets or bond markets. So it's really important to have a good global vendor and a global offering so that we can serve our customers, which tend to be global banks or global financial institutions.
Yeah, let's talk more about your customers now, because I would love for you to walk me through a success story where QuantumStreet AI was able to meet a customer need, and just one that sticks out to you.
We're saying customers, but I very much think of them as partners, and I think they think of us as partners, and we think of IBM as partners. So when we bring on customers, is really like a three-way type of partnership. What I mean by that is, let's take, you mentioned BNP Paribas, so let's take them as an example. BNP Paribas wanted to create a custom AI powered index that covers a multi-asset class. So it covers like US equities and Japanese equities and Chinese equities and Japanese bonds and commodities, with the exception of agriculture. So it's like metals and mining and energy, and wanted it to be like long and short. So they're thinking about what is the solution that is best for our investors. In this case, they wanted to work with a bank called XP, which is the largest Brazilian bank. And so they're talking to their customers and saying, hey, what kind of indices are you interested in? We're going to create a structured product. And what a structured product is a bank will sell an investor, retail investor, a CD. That CD is linked to that index. In this case, it's the AI Power Cross Trend Index. It looks across all the different asset classes and can go long, short, in different kinds of markets. And they invest in that, and then they ultimately get a payoff after a year, 2 years, 3 years, depending upon how long their CD investment is. So our client and a lot of times their client are coming up with a strategy which, what different asset classes are important to them. So they're designing all of that, and we're helping them with the inputs and helping them understand what's possible on our system. And we co-created an AI-powered index for them. But the index, like our relationship doesn't just stop at like, okay, we've built the index and now we're done. AI still requires a lot of education around it. So we help them engage in a go-to-market strategy as well. And this is also where IBM comes in. So I was down in Brazil. They have a IBM Innovation Studio. They actually have IBM Innovation Studios all over the world. We've done these in China and Japan, US, Germany, London. So they have these innovation studios. And what these innovation studios do is they have different kinds of AI assets there. These are like use cases, real life use cases. So for example, they have a autonomous race car, and the race car goes around the track. And what you end up seeing is every time the race car goes around the track, it keeps getting better and better through like the machine learning process. And so they can see these real life use cases, and then we link it back to our investment process and say, here are the different asset classes, and we're making forecasts. And every forecast we make, we observe the data, like in the case of the shape of the racetrack, and then we incorporate that into the next forecast. And those forecasts over time can improve based on the learnings. And so we really help our investors get their clients, help them wrap their arms around these different use cases and different AI technologies and how they're being applied into the product that they're ultimately out there selling. Because a lot of times in the business model that we engage in, we are also rewarded based on their success. So they're going to go out and raise assets and sell this strategy, these financial products, to retail investors. And so the more we help them raise the level of assets, product sales, the better we do. And so across 5 continents now, our customers have sold over $6 billion in financial products.
When it comes to the laws behind AI, which at this point in the US, there really aren't many. It's a tricky business, AI. It's something that I think, like you said, in 2016, people were not paying as much attention to as they are right now. The last couple of years have really given such a boom to this sector. So there is some conversation happening in Washington about artificial intelligence. So how does IBM help you navigate the shifting landscape behind that when it comes to AI?
When we think about AI, we think about explainability, transparency. These are all very important things to our customer. And we also think about governance and ethics. And so we really want to, focus on our technology and focus on the application, but we want to also be ethical. And I think when it comes to trust and credibility and ethics in the AI space, IBM is a leader. I was doing an IBM Innovation Studio event with a large global bank, and IBM had mentioned to me that the day before they had people from the Hill, and actually it's the top, I can't say their names, but it was the top people that are engaged specifically in this. And it wasn't just IBM, it was, IBM also had brought leaders in from other companies too. So I think that also kind of goes to show that they're leading the way, but they also value other companies' opinions as it relates to ethics. So we're working with them, and we're kind of following behind them to apply these various ethics also to what we're doing. And so I'm very comfortable in the fact that we are following the leader as it relates to the ethical application of AI.
So my last question for you today, Art, would just be, how can interested businesses or buyers get in touch with you and learn more about QuantumStreet AI and potentially engage your business?
I would suggest you visit QuantumStreetAI.com. We have a book a demo in there or AI index consultation that you can sign up for. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, or shoot me an email at art.amador@quantumstreetai.com.
Art, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and getting to know QuantumStreet AI. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Katie. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much to Art for joining me today, and thank you for watching or listening. You can check out every episode of Channel Insider Partner POV on channelinsider.com, or watch us on our YouTube page at channelinsider_news and trends. You can also listen to this episode and every episode as a podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow wherever possible so you never miss an episode. Come connect with Channel Insider on LinkedIn or X at Channel Insider, or with me at Katie Bavoso. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Bavoso, and I'll see you next time.